where do I start with this? As there's just so much to unpack. I guess I'll start at the beginning. Warnie is a two-part TV series based on the life of brilliant and at times controversial cricketer Shane Warne. It aired on the Nine Network in Australia recently, with the first episode premiering on Sunday, the 25th of June. Production was underway within weeks of Warne's death late in 2022, which caused a lot of controversy among his family, friends and associates who felt it was a bit too soon to be doing it. I tend to agree that it was made too quickly and aired even more so. However, there's no doubt various networks were falling over themselves to be the first ones to get something made and in the viewing arena. So you can kind of see why Nine did it. And I guess even though he was associated with Foxtel later in life, Channel 9 provided us all the great Warne moments when he was playing, and he was a commentator on there for a really long time as well. So it's kind of fitting that they did get to do it first. So hours after the series was announced, Warne's eldest daughter, Brooke, accused Nine of being beyond disrespectful and insensitive to greenlight the series just a few months after her dad's death, and also claiming that it was just a ratings ploy. And let's face it, she's not wrong. It probably was. And they were just cashing in on something that they knew would get people watching, at least to start with. Now, according to Wikipedia, the miniseries went into production after Channel 9 and Screen Time had talks with the family. And the article goes on to state the family later lent their support to the production, closely collaborating. Now, having said that, members of the Warne family have reportedly made angry comments regarding the final product. So it's difficult to ascertain how much collaboration took place and how much notice the production company took of what they were told, which, as we know, historical accuracy in historical dramas and so forth. You can give as much information as you want, but whether they take it on board and run with it is not always the way it pans out. All right, a trailer was first shown during NRL State of Origin Game 1 in early June, which obviously had a really massive television audience. And unfortunately for Channel 9, it received a pretty icy reception, according to Wikipedia, with media users calling it disgraceful. The trailer was also released on social media around the same time, with similar reactions being commonplace. All right, so what's it actually about? If you're watching this, you probably know who Shane Warne is. Probably many would say one of the greatest cricketers of all time. Definitely, in my opinion, the best cricketer I've ever seen in my lifetime. And I've seen some absolute great cricketers. What he made that ball do was just unbelievable. He also could bat a bit, and he definitely could field, and he would have been the best captain Australia had in my lifetime, had the Australian Cricket Board not been a bunch of wowsers who couldn't handle a bloke who was a bit eccentric, to say the least. So the series all kicks off with some footage of Warne's funeral, then morphs into his meeting with former captain Steve Waugh during a tour of the West Indies in 1999. It seems a strange place to start off initially, but eventually you get the character arc happening and it sort of makes a bit of sense. So the first episode covers his period from being a struggling AFL footballer, which was the VFL in those days, playing for St Kilda, to his emergence as a cricketer in the late 80s, early 90s. Everything in his life is on the public record, so I won't go into too many specific details of events during this period. That's the 1999 sort of period. Other than to say, it ends that episode just as he fails a drug test on the eve of the 2003 Cricket World Cup. Covered also are his early relationships with Simone Callaghan, who eventually became his wife, Terry Jenner, and a John the Bookmaker affair. Sorry about that. There's something flew in my face. I don't know what that was. A little bug or something. From there, episode 2 explores the rest of the drug scandal, the latter portion of his international playing career and his marriage breakdown, which were all pretty big public events. Women's Day and New Idea and all those sort of shit magazines that women read, just they went over the top giving it coverage, and obviously the tabloids in it as well. So you also get to see some of the more controversial off-field capers that took place, and it ends in a bit more footage of his funeral. So I'll just sort of leave it at that, and I'll get to some other stuff as I get to it. And for now, here's some of the more technical aspects. So it was made by director Jeff Bennett of Wolf Creek, Sea Patrol, and Farscape. I haven't watched Farscape, but Wolf Creek and Sea Patrol are cool, so that's good. The writer was Matt Ford, who did Underbelly, Vanishing Act, Stingers, and also on Farscape. He was also the singer of Machine Gun Fellatio, a band who were late 90s, early 2000s, had some interesting hit songs on the alternative scene, Triple J Darlings. He also co-wrote the Whitlam song No Aphrodisiac, which for a pretty dreary ballad is actually a bit of a banger. So if you haven't heard that, go and look it up. It's not too bad. Paul Maloney was the producer. He did Crackerjack, killer movie with Mick Malloy at his best before he became a bit of a tree hugger. And he did City Homicide as well. Michael Yuzerski was the composer. He did The Tax Collector and Mr. In-Between. And I am going to do something on Mr. In-Between because that is a fucking amazing series. If you haven't watched it, watch it now. Don't even think about it. Just do it. Who else have we got? So Joseph Pickering was the cinematographer. He did Idiot Box. Not a bad movie back in the late 90s, I think it was, early 2000s maybe. And he did a couple of the Underbelly telly movies as well, which Tell Them Lucifer was here, and I think Vanishing Act was one of them. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe Vanishing Act was the later one, but there was also the one about the guy who infiltrated the Australian Mafia as well. So he did that. Who's in it? Alex Williams stars as Shane Warne. He played Julian Assange in Underground. John Harvey in Brock, which I did not even realise. But now that I've looked back and gone, oh, yeah, that was him. I think he was never referred to as John or John Harvey in the show. He's always just called Slug. Peter Brock just gave everyone nicknames, so if you didn't know that, now you know. I'm sure you feel better for it. He also played Kirk Pengelly in Never Tear Us Apart, the INXS story. Now, that I had no idea that was him. And I haven't seen Underground, but in Brock and in Never Tear Us Apart, he was great. Obviously, the guy can act and he can play a character role really well. I think he was a good choice. I'll get more to that a bit later. So Marnie Kennedy was Simone Callahan. She was in Conspiracy 365 and Hoax. I actually want to see Hoax. I haven't been able to get my hands on a copy for free anywhere at the moment. I will get there and I will review it. Anthony Hayes was Terry Jenner, or TJ as he's referred to mostly in the series. Now, he played Caesar Campbell in Bikie Wars Brothers in Arms, which I mentioned in an earlier episode that he was miscast. However, he absolutely nailed Jenner in this, so he does redeem himself. And sorry if there's a bit of grumbling. My stomach's rumbling away. Must be hungry. Shanti Carly, who I'm pretty sure is an English actress. She played Elizabeth Hurley. She's a bit of an up-and-comer without too many credits to date. I thought she did okay. It sort of looked a bit like Hurley if you squint your eyes enough. But I mean, Elizabeth Hurley's smoking hot. It's hard to really replicate someone that beautiful. Okay. I know. I'm looking at her for her looks, not her acting, according to you, but life goes on, right? Tom Stokes played Steve Waugh. He was in Trigger Point in The Railway Man. I'm going to get to this character at some point. Ben Hall was Mark Ward, Steve's twin. He was in Anzac Girls and Shifter. Kamran Fully Love was Salem Malik. He was in 100 and Another Life. Kevin Harrington as Bob Simpson. He was in Underbelly, Australian Rules, Neighbours. He's been in everything. Really, really good Aussie actor. Plays a role unbelievably well, no matter what role he's given. His role with Desmond Moran in Underbelly was really well done. He was in the first one and then the Tony Mockbell one, Fat Tony and Co, I think it was called. And in Australian Rules, his character Arksy, that's the nickname that the football was giving. He was really, really good, really well played. Loved that movie. Spore some really good themes, and yeah, he did a great job. And yeah, finally, of the sort of the main characters, I guess we got Noah Jansen as Kevin Peterson. Noah was in Neighbours. I don't really know anything about him. I haven't watched Neighbours for about 25 years, so I'm assuming Paul Robinson's still in it and womanising people, but that's for another day. Could not get any information on the budget of the series, although I doubt it was very much, which is highly visible in pretty much everything. I actually thought it might have been high with the London scenes, but then I found out they were shot in East Melbourne, so that's pretty disappointing. I mean, East Melbourne and London, come on, Channel 9, you can do better than that. A lot of the match footage is from the Channel 9 archives as well, so they saved plenty of cash by not having to reshoot it with expensive actors. They would have just sent the work experience kid down into their archives to dig up what they needed, or maybe it's all digital format, whatever. They obviously saved heaps of money. And I'm going to put a pin in that last statement, as I am going to have an opinion regarding the actors who were hired to play various cricketers throughout and how well or otherwise they matched up with the archival footage Channel 9 used. So what they got right, firstly, I thought they did a great job casting Alex Williams and Marnie Kennedy as Shane and Simone. The likenesses are excellent, and they got a lot of their characters' mannerisms right. Plus, their chemistry was unbelievably good. It was amazing. If that's what the real Shane and Simone were like with their chemistry, then you can see it. The same goes for Anthony Hayes as Terry Jenner. Not only does he look pretty close to the real TJ, he portrays his personality really well, and again has really good chemistry with Williams. The actors who played Merv Hughes and Ravi Shastri looked pretty close to the real guys as well, even if we barely saw them for more than a couple of seconds. Maybe with the Merv one, it was probably just the mustache. They sort of nailed that. I mean, it's not hard, is it? But Merv's a pretty distinctive looking bloke, and I felt they did all right. Probably should have had him on there more, being one of Warne's better mates and obviously a teammate for a fair portion of his career, but it is what it is. It wasn't the Merv Hughes story, was it? What I really liked was that they went to the effort to replicate Warnie's Cortina that he drove as a youngster at the Cricket Academy, and until he made it to the big time and probably got given a nice, free, big, expensive car. They absolutely nailed his various hairstyles as well and had them spot on for each time period. Like, you just got to go back and look at all the old footage and the photos and whatever of the year, and you can see that they've done their research in this department. Speaking of hairstyles, the Kevin Peterson skunk head made an appearance from 2005 and looked just as shit here in the series as it did in real life at the time. I don't know if KP regrets having that hairstyle, but he should, because it looked fucking disgusting. Now, Alex Williams did an awesome job of imitating Warne's bowling action. It wasn't 100% right. Geez, it was as close as anyone could do and looked real. The other actors also looked like they played proper cricket shots when batting and had decent bowling actions. And I guess the only real comparison for Aussie TV viewers to this is the old Bodyline series from the 1980s, where Gary Sweet as Bradman was the only one who looked like he knew what he was doing, and Gary played a lot of cricket anyway, and he still does, from what I can gather. There was the 1983, I don't know if you could call it a Bollywood, but it was an Indian TV movie about the 1983 World Cup where all the Indian characters look exactly like the guys they're meant to be, and obviously spent a lot of time imitating their bowling and batting actions and the way they spoke. But I mean, Indians just love cricket more than anything, and I'm sure they could imitate every cricketer ever invented because they love the game that much. Aussies, on the other hand, actors are actors. Yeah, actors are going to act, aren't they? But yeah, they really got this really, really, really well done as far as looking like cricketers, but not necessarily looking like the cricketers they're meant to be. I'll get to that soon. So a little bit of trivia. During filming, Williams and Kennedy both sustained injuries while recording an intimate scene. Obvious what that one was, revealing that the scene went wrong when they missed their mark of trying to land on the bed, but instead landed on the floor and required medical attention. What they got wrong, where do I start, considering it was a lot? I mean a real lot, but I'll try not to be too brutal. Very early on at the Cricket Academy, there's an unnamed, unknown coach running the show. To me, that's a massive insult to the late, great Rod Marsh, who was doing the job at the time and for a real lot of years either side of Warne's time there. Channel 9 should know better. I mean, Marsh was a commentator on Channel 9 for a while. He's one of our most famous cricketers of all time in Australia, and everyone knows he was the Academy chief back then and for the whole time he was. I mean, anyone who knows anything about cricket knows that. And look, it doesn't really improve from there with a lot of events being shown in a disjointed and incorrect timeline, leaving out a lot of key moments and glossing over others. They overemphasised some that weren't any bigger than those left out. It was kind of a case of, I guess they knew which ones they wanted to aim for and turn into the money makers, I guess, that they were hoping they were going to get. His peak period from around 94 to 96 was really poorly compiled and treated like it barely happened. There was no mystery ball, which, like, if you remember, if you were around in those days watching cricket, even if you weren't, it was in your face everywhere, all over TV, all over the newspapers, magazines, Warne and his mystery ball. It was huge. There was no special Warnie merchandise such as the ball I think it was called the Incredible, designed specifically to teach kids how to bowl leg spin. And where was his partnership with Crank Casino and marketing with other icons like Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan? I mean, come on. Two of the biggest sports stars in the world. And I know you're obviously not going to get the real guys on, but you can get people that kind of look like them and just say, oh, well, you know, Warnie was mates with these guys and he partied with them and he got paid to hang out with him at Crown Casino and do a bit of gambling. I mean, yeah, not everyone's into gambling, but it's a big part of where Warne ended up after cricket as well, with his poker tours and so forth. So, yeah, all that stuff was key to his rise in popularity worldwide, but doesn't even make an appearance at all. And where the fuck was his hat trick? I mean, come on, Channel 9. What were you thinking leaving that out? That was huge. And the overemphasizing of him being a pizza-eating freak was completely overdone. Now, I'm not saying he didn't eat a lot of pizza, because he absolutely did. But he didn't spend so many hours of his day doing it either. And the baked beans on tour didn't make an appearance until he went to India in 1998, whereas it's much earlier in the show in this instance. Now, Channel 9 did also make sure the adverts had a lot of pizza in them as well, which made me even want to eat one, and I did. So advertising works, doesn't it? Now, look, before I launch into the actors who played the cricketers, there was a player's wife called Julie who isn't introduced with any real description. They don't tell us her surname or who her husband is. Yet she seems to be a big spokesperson for what happens on tour. I feel as though Matt Ford has just added a bit of hearsay from the later 1997 Ashes tour and chucked it in for the 93 series. And just for a bit of background on that, the 97 series, there were a lot of rumours coming out that were allegedly started by the wife of a player on his first tour, I think, where some of the innuendo was that married cricketers were having a little bit on the side with some women who weren't their wives or girlfriends. And then that player's wife claimed later that that was why he didn't get another gig in the team after she pointed that out. It is what it is. It probably was true, but I'm not condoning that sort of behaviour, blokes cheating on their wives or whatever. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know. What happens on tour stays on tour, doesn't it? Isn't that what they say? All right, so the actors who were supposedly meant to be famous, well-known cricketers. Let's start with Mike Gadding. He was short, fat, and had a very grey beard in real life. I can remember Mike Gadding as far back as probably 1983, and he had a grey beard then, and he was probably only about 22 years old. But not here in the series, though. He's tall, young, and has a brown beard. Now, if they weren't weaving it in with archival footage, they could almost get away with it. However, they did do that. And you see an old grey bearded Gadding in half of his appearance, and a younger version without the grey and close-ups. With Brian Lara, it's like they've just picked any black guy they could get their hands on. I mean, come on, guys. It's Brian Lara. Get it right. And Sachin Tendulkar, who was 19 at the time he first played against Warne, looks like Virender Sehwag's grandfather. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ. The two most recognisable cricketers, well, two of the three most recognisable cricketers in the last 50 years. You get one absolutely spot on being Warnie, and the other two, you just fuck it right up. Come on, man. Right, then we get to Alan Border. He looks more like the guy from Jim's Mowing than one of Australia's most recognisable sportsmen of all time. Steve Waugh and his brother Mark don't even look, act, or talk like the real guys. And the rest of the teammates are so unrecognisable. No one even has a clue who any of them are. I mean, where the fuck was Mark Taylor? Warne's captain for 6 years during his absolute peak period. I mean, come on, Tubby. Everyone knows Tubby. All right, I'm going to say, I'll concede this much. Tim May wasn't too bad. Looked a bit like him, talks a bit like him. You know, not 100%, but probably about 80%, which is about 79% more than what they got with the other guys. I mean, look, the rest were clearly underpaid extras that Channel 9 were hoping we wouldn't notice. We did notice, Channel 9. You fucked it up. Be better. And something just from me that I sort of noticed, anyone who knows the Shane Warne story would be aware of Rodney Hogg getting sacked from a newspaper he worked at for suggesting Warne should get picked for Australia when he'd barely played for his state. This was a huge story at the time and still gets told in most circles when discussing his rise to the national team. Channel 9 gives us fucking donuts here. Donuts. Not a single tumbleweed even. Nothing. Come on. Now, the John the Bookmaker storyline is reasonably accurate, though. I feel like they've sort of done okay here. Now, despite the timeline being altered to stretch it out for a longer period, I get it. They're trying to make that a big focus of the story. And, yeah, this sort of stuff happens all the time. It's just the way it is. It's what they call artistic license. Now, secondary to this is Salim Malik's character who towers over Warne, yet in real life was a good 2 inches shorter, maybe even shorter again. He's a bit of a midge. He also looks like Ravi Shastri, and for all we know, it was probably the same guy playing both roles. I mean, imagine that, right? But kind of looks a bit that way. Channel 9, put more money into your budget next time. Get some better actors. Now, I feel like there's an opportunity to spend some time on Warnie's charity work and the time he spent mentoring young cricketers on the T20 circuit post his Test career. But look, I'm not offended by it being left out, as neither were huge headline grabbers for the most part. Kind of like people were just like, oh, he's doing that. That's great. He's actually not a bad bloke, which, yeah, it is what it is. Maybe this could have made a quick sort of mention in passing, would have done the trick. So the reception, the miniseries on release was slammed on social media, as I mentioned, as awful, cringe, and one of the worst series produced by Channel 9. I don't know. I mean, Channel 9's made some shit throughout the years. I don't even watch Channel 9 other than the fact that this was on, and I wanted to watch this to see how much they fucked it up. 528,000 viewers tuned in for episode 1, with that number dropping to 434,000 on the second night, and was soundly beaten by a game show on the Sunday and was dead set flogged by a show on Channel 10 on the Monday. And Channel 10 is a network that's almost dead, so how people were even watching that channel staggers me, but obviously they realised that the Warne series wasn't good. Now, Channel 9's Facebook page, users criticised the series as very ordinary, saying it looked cheap and was horrible to watch and called it disrespectful. I think I mentioned similar sentiments to the trailer earlier on as well. And look, my personal thoughts are that it was sort of okay in parts. And I did make it through both episodes despite rolling my eyes on plenty of occasions. But I'm a fucking cricket nuffy. I know, like, as much as I can about cricket. Like, seriously, I probably know too much and I store too much information in my head about the game. But I just love it. So I guess I'm a bit of a rivet canner in this instance. If you're a cricket diehard, it's worth watching because it's about cricket and more specifically about one of the greatest to play the game. Whether you enjoy the experience or not is completely your call. But I would love to hear from you on what you thought of it, if you have watched it or you do eventually watch it. Now, if you're not a cricket fan or you spent 1993 to 2012 living under a rock, you might find this an interesting study of a flawed genius and consider it a warts and all look at his life. I watched it once, probably won't watch it again, ever, but you can make your own mind up on that. I'm not going to try and convince you otherwise. Now, I give it a 4 out of 10, and that's pretty generous if I'm being honest, but they did get some things right and deserve some points for that. So, yeah, that's my take on the Warnie miniseries. If you love cricket, watch it. If you don't, whatever. We can't be friends, probably. Yeah, so I'll be back. I've got some more stuff coming. I got some music reviews and a couple more movies. Got another Aussie war movie that was requested on social media coming really soon. I'll probably record that later today. Until then, keep watching Still Have Productions on social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I'll try and get some stuff up on TikTok. Maybe a few short reels or whatever they call them on there. Until then, keep watching and I'll see you when I see you.